Hey there, Cancer. So, Cancer Ascendant, this is your Ascendant forecast for the next 2 weeks from the 9th of August right the way through to the 23rd of August. That's the full moon in Aquarius, right the way through to the new moon in Virgo. Now, if you're new to this channel, this is a whole sign Western tropical perspective. So the forecast I've designed is really based on a whole sign way of looking at the birth chart. Now, if you love astrology and you know your birth chart and you know that you prefer Placidus, and that's how you usually look at your chart, then I advise you listen to this forecast, the Cancer forecast, and also the Leo forecast that comes straight after. These two together will really help you because in your first house, you have both Cancer and Leo. Anyway. So what I'm going to be looking at is a lot of the themes, I guess, coming up between these two big moons. Now, there are some huge themes in particular. In fact, I'm just going to go straight to my first slide, in fact. We've got like these big themes. So, for instance, at the time of the full moon, I think big things are being revealed. It's a time of revelations. It's a time of unmasking. It's a time to kind of honor the mess of being human. And I've got some questions I think will be quite helpful that I will answer by the end of this forecast for you. But the first question is, where has my mask been for survival? I.e., like, what mask have I been wearing to keep myself alive? You know, what survival mask did I create for myself? And what would I prefer to express? You know, what would be more appropriate for me to express at this point in my life? So this is all coming, I think, from the revelations of the full moon in Aquarius. And it may get messy. And then, you know, I think after the unmasking of the full moon, we're coming into this pressure to purify, this post-full moon process where we're refining. And, you know, I think we're really thinking what truth about myself or my life has been impossible to ignore and what would shift it. You know, so, you know, depending on what we're learning about ourselves right now, what is so glaringly obvious that we just can't ignore it anymore? Like, what pattern do we need to stop right now because it's causing us pain? And what would shift it? You know, to me, this is the refinement stage. And then, you know, we're really coming up to the new moon in Virgo, and I see that as the rebirth. You know, this video is like, you were born for this rebirth. You know, I really think that everything that's happened is starting to make sense a little bit now. And it's making sense from the rebirth potentials that we're going through. And so my last question is, what sacred act of cleansing and reordering could help me restore faith in myself? So these are the questions I'm going to, you know, consider. I'm looking at two charts today, the full moon chart from your perspective as a Cancerian ascendant, and also the new moon chart from a Cancerian perspective. Now, I often do also talk about the moon phases and also the all the different aspects that are taking place. But I've put that into an in-depth video. It's called the Full Astrology. It's the Full Scoop, the Full Scoop Astrology edition for the 9th to 23rd. So if you do want to look at that, you can see it up here on the link. So yeah, let's have a look at this. Now, before I get going, I just want to say thank you to everybody that supports this channel and supports me through membership. I've got a couple of communities, a forecast one and a forecast plus extra stuff like webinars and you know, meetups and a lot of sort of shared learning. You get forecasts you know, every 2 weeks and also Monday to Friday as well. So there's a lot going on. But for everyone that has joined me, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm delighted that it's growing every time I do these forecasts. That's always good news, isn't it? So yeah, these are my focus points and these are the charts. So let's get going. So the first bit to pay attention to then. So yeah, let's recap. So the full moon is falling over the second house and the 8th house polarity. So the full moon is in the 8th house at the time of the full moon, and the sun is in the second house. So this is really bringing home the need to examine your values, how you value things, how you value yourself, how other people value you, how you value them. This second house is about your money, your ability to receive, your ability to grow money by earning it. And it really talks about how you value yourself. And I always think when the sun is coming through here, it's really useful because it is a time when we tend to pay a bit more attention to how we are doing what we're doing in the world. Now we've had Mercury retrograde going through here, and it actually goes direct on the 11th. So that's Monday, the 11th of August. So it's only retrograde for a couple of days, but it has been going retrograde through your second house. And so I do think it's probably given you a fresh perspective. Now, I would just want to share, on the 11th, I'm going to be releasing a series of forecasts for how you're using Mercury going direct. Mercury is going direct on the 11th. I'm giving you a small forecast. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long, just about what it means, how you're going to get going again, and what it means with this very strong opposition to Pluto. And so I talk about that in a forecast which is released on the 11th. But if you watch the end of this show, there'll be a link. It'll automatically go straight into that episode, so you can catch it before the 11th if you want to. But this retrograde, I think, has been really getting you to reevaluate your money in a really strong way. And probably it's brought up some doubts about yourself, like your self-esteem. You've been reviewing it in quite a strong way. And so these two, oppositions in the second and the 8th house is really, I guess, about your values, about yourself. How much do you trust yourself? And also, how are you reacting when you feel that others are judging you, possibly not sharing their wealth with you, or that it's uncomfortable sharing wealth? It's definitely bringing up some kind of difficulty. But then you have to also add in, and this is really tough as well, there is this Mars-Saturn opposition and also a Mars-Neptune opposition, exact oppositions on the same day as the full moon. And they're going across the 4th and the 10th. The 4th and 10th houses are really substantial houses. These are really important. So Mars is in the home, and Saturn and Neptune are up in the 10th house. That's about your career and how you're managing your career. So to me, right off the bat, this is really talking about how we feel about ourselves and how we believe other people are judging us can really affect how we are at home, what we might choose to do at home, like how are we going to take action at home. And also it's having a knock-on effect in terms of our career. Like, do we have the self-esteem to be able to do the next step in our career? So there's a lot of questioning going on for sure. And then as we go to the new moon, by that point, the moon has gone all the way around here in that 2-week period. And then look, we've got this new moon in Virgo. Now, just want to quickly say, this is just the first of 2 new moons in Virgos, because the second new moon in Virgo comes at the end of September, like around about the 23rd of September. And so you've got one at 0 degrees and then one a month later at 29 degrees. Just FYI, this next, like the following new moon in September is going to be in opposition to Saturn and Neptune. So it's really going to create a need for change. These new moons are very, very strong. They are portals of change. They are giving us an opportunity to kind of reroute, get onto a new track. If you believe in like timelines and things like that, you might think of it like jumping a timeline, sort of reorienting yourself into a new direction. Well, these two are really showing a renewed direction and energy towards how you're managing your third house. And the third house is about what you know, about the narrative, like the narrative you grew up with, what's normal, a sense of feeling like a sense of belonging. It also looks at schools and early education, but it's also about like where you hang out with your friends and stuff as well. It's kind of like your local marketplace, your local community. It's a very, very busy place. It also shows your local community at work. It's a place where everything is really familiar and known. And so to me, this is a very, very social part of your chart, and it's due for an upgrade. And you're still going to be considering it a month later. In fact, the one a month later is an eclipse. And it's an eclipse in opposition to Saturn and Neptune. That's a really, really strong thing. So my advice to you is, whatever is coming out from this reading, start taking action on it. You know, if it resonates and you recognize this in yourself, start to consider what you might need to do to have a rebirth in your third house, have a rebirth in being normal, like feeling normal, feeling that sense of belonging, a rebirth in your community, a rebirth in your education and what you know. This is really strong. And it also has to do with siblings as well. So if there's a sibling relationship that's not very good, this could be a rebirth of that. It's a really, really busy and integral place. I think it's also a place where we might get a lot of trauma in the past, actually. You know, like your early tries of socializing yourself at nursery school, infant school, junior school. I mean, obviously that's from a British perspective. I don't know, like you've got high school and whatnot in America. You know, we have different schooling systems, but these are our first attempts at learning language, adapting, making friends, and feeling that sense of belonging. So I really do think the double new moons over, you know, the next month and a half are teaching you about your level of belonging and what you might need to do to belong. And mostly I think it's nothing you have to do externally, but it's an inside job, as everything is. But this is really much more important than normal because it's got a finger of Yod, a finger of fate, or you might call it a finger of God or a Yod, pointing right at the new moon. To me, that means that this really isn't a casual new moon. This is like what you're refining now with this new moon is, I think, going to affect you in the long term. You know, it's got a lot more gravity than a new moon would normally have. So let's explore that a little bit, because that is where we're going. You know, I've already spoken a lot about the full moon in the last series of forecasts, and there's a separate full moon forecast as well with asteroids and stuff. So yeah, I'm going to focus more on this new moon. So as I'm looking at this, what's really coming up for you, Cancer, is this feeling of a need to blend in, a need to have a reboot of your feelings of belonging. I think it's really about fitting in. I think it's going to bring up a lot of stuff from the past. Now, it's underpinned by Saturn and Neptune in their conjunction and Pluto in sign of Aquarius. Now, Pluto is in the 8th house, and the 8th house can be quite a traumatic place. And so you might find that what is underpinning this new sense of, I need to find a new relationship with, like, between me and my community. I need to find a new way of relating to where I live. I need to find a new way of relating to the kind of people I attract into my life and, you know, where my life is situated. You know, Pluto here, as he's come into this 8th house, I imagine has brought up a lot to do with old relationships, old traumas to do with relationships, in particular areas where it's felt like other people have had control over you and have almost had your balls in their hand. Obviously, these are metaphorical balls, not real ones. And these are for everyone, not just men, or, you know, this is like, you know, they've grasped you by the short and curlies and they're not letting you go. To me, it feels like, you know, anyone that has got a sort of their claws into you and who have sort of controlled you. So to me, I think old control issues where you've had really strong people in your formative years, where you've had where you've grown up with a sense of this is how it is, and if you believe otherwise, you're gone. You know, to me, this is like the epitome of conditional love. If you've grown up with that sense of conditional love, I'm pretty sure that one of the responses could very well have been, well, I better fit in or else I won't be loved. And so I think everything to do with fitting in from your childhood is probably coming up right now, as are opportunities to correct the past. You know, Pluto's not just there to be punitive. He's also there to open up the opportunities for people from the past to come back and for you to sort of have a new relationship based on being grown-ups now, hopefully. Now, I also think how things are at work and how things are in the external world. So sort of, I mean, your work might actually be in your local community, who knows? But, you know, where you work and where you stand strong and kind of say, this is who I am and this is what I am about. You know, the 10th house really declares a lot about you. You know, it really shows, you know, what's important to you, how you might get recognized, appreciated. It also shows the sort of impact you want to have in the world, and like how strongly do you want it to be in the world. And so Saturn up here right now is bringing a lot of seriousness and probably some very serious people into your life. Probably also a feeling that you're being judged by some kind of matrix or matrices. Maybe there's a work-based one. Maybe there are certain checklists and milestones you need to achieve. Maybe there's somebody that's like almost dangling a carrot and sort of keeping everything just slightly out of reach. And, Saturn up here can be very, very frustrating. There's a good side to it as well. It can really, when you're really sure about what you're doing, it can help you apply yourself in a really disciplined way. Neptune here as well, it can bring up some real confusion about the relationship between you and your bosses, and also you and the people maybe that are subordinates. To me, it's creating a lack of boundaries and a sort of difficult no man's land. And so that can create a lot of doubts about your performance. And so really what I see right now is this real need to know where you belong is coming out of this sort of difficulty from past expectations, and now this feeling of, I'm not entirely sure how to move forwards with my career right now. I know I'm going through change, and let's also add in with this new moon, it's exactly in a square to Uranus as well in your 12th house. And so he's going to be bringing up a lot of unconscious stuff right when you need it. It's like all of these things are coming up to be seen. And it's just because, we've shut it down. We felt odd. We've shut it down, felt difficult. We kind of built a wall between us and that awkward feeling. But Uranus here in a square to this new moon is absolutely opening the floodgates and letting it come out. So this is a pretty important time for you. There are a couple of really important times I would like to point out, though, because there's some really great stuff about this. And this is the most important thing, actually, that I do need to mention. And this is, of course, this beautiful conjunction between Jupiter and Venus in your first house, also in a trine to the North Node. Beautiful, utterly beautiful. This is breathtaking. This is actually one of the best aspects this year. So it's taken me, I can't believe it's taken me so long to mention it, because this is the most obvious thing, in fact, about this next 2 weeks. Venus and Jupiter in the first house is giving you also this sense, I don't want to say glamour, but it's almost like your star is rising. So even though you don't really necessarily know what your next step in your career is, and there are some difficult boundaries to move beyond, there is also this sense that your star is rising, and there is this sense that there are people there that really want to celebrate you and support you. And of course, that's very difficult if you've also got some old patterns playing out that you've had more access to. I think some of this can happen sometimes when our ambitions suddenly expand. I think, our safety mechanisms inside our brain are on high alert, like, oh my God, you're going to go into a new area. You're going to go into a sudden rapid expansion that sounds unsafe. And all of a sudden these old mechanisms spring into action. So there might be some of that going on as well, because, Jupiter and Venus in your first house is there to really encourage you to feel free, to feel loved, to feel respected, to feel like gentle with yourself. It's very generous. It's lovely. It brings up so much compassion and kindness. And so I really think your reputation is on the rise. I think this is helpful. Now, I can't remember if I mentioned this at all, but Mercury retrograde, if you listen to the end, there is a Mercury retrograde forecast. I think I did mention it. Maybe I'm going a bit mad. But yeah, there's a Mercury opposite Pluto forecast, mini one that's going to hopefully help you. And it's interesting because there are some connections between Chiron in this 2 weeks, between Chiron and Mercury, and also the Sun and Chiron, and later Venus and Chiron. So Chiron's quite an interesting player as well. So let's focus on that a little bit. So the 10th to the 12th is really this time when Venus and Jupiter are really kind of being celebrated. But in this last week, we've got the Sun in a trine with Chiron. And I think this is, you can't see it here, but the Sun it would have been here at the moment of time of this exact trine. To me, this trine between the sun and Chiron. It happens twice a year. And it's a time when we have a sense of renewed faith in ourselves, and something falls into place. And, maybe there's a bit of a breakthrough. Maybe you learn from one of your experiences. Chiron in your 10th has really put you through the ringer in terms of career and in terms of confidence to push yourself forwards. You might have found that during that time you've got into a lot more healing related activities, and grown in stature because of it, like your ability to have compassion and stuff. And the sun, on this 19th, I just think this is really helpful. It's really helping, like whatever's happening at work that you've resolved about yourself has this knock-on effect of increasing your sense of kindness to yourself and your compassion. And I think it catches the eye of some very helpful people. It's really, really beneficial. And then the sun's going into Virgo soon after that. And then we've got the Venus square Chiron that really, really comes in at the end of this period. Now, what's significant here is that Venus is going to come into an opposition to Pluto. And so this is bringing up some very, very strong feelings, possibly about your performance, and how good you are. Venus in the first is implying that you are good and people are seeing you, but then there's this possible sort of creepy feeling from the past. Pluto is like, it's almost like that da 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 kind of noise that you might hear from Jaws. It's that, is everything safe? So again, I really think this idea of safety that the new moon is giving us is a really, really strong idea. So to me, this may well come out through your career, through big changes. And again, I can't stress enough that, when you are rushing forwards quite fast, it may well come up. It may well bring up a lot of stuff from your unconscious mind and self-sabotage to try and keep you on an even keel and not make you venture into an unknown situation. So I really do think this new moon in Virgo is here to protect you, and to help you find a new way of growing, but growing safely. So, growing into a place where you feel safe and nestled and that you belong, even if actually you've always felt odd your whole life. So maybe you're about to solve that. And I hope so. So I just want to go back to those original questions again. So where has my mask been for survival? I think your mask, if you've had one, I think your mask has really been there to try and protect you and to make you feel as a useful member of society as possible. I mean, Cancerian people really have that as a strong thing, as a strong motif. Now, Uranus in the 12th house is really allowing that mask to completely drop. I think that's quite helpful. So I do think that mask is going down. What would you prefer to express? I think that I think you're coming into a time of real sort of genuine feeling, where you can just say, look, I really do have a sense of wanting to belong, and I'm comfortable in myself anyway. So it's like I no longer have to perform to belong. I no longer have to get everybody else's approval to belong. This is about belonging because you're human, or belonging because you belong to yourself. To me, this is the deepest message of self-love, in fact. This is about you deciding, I belong to myself, and that's enough. That's all I need, in fact. And so what truth about myself and my life has become impossible to ignore? So if we ask that question, what has become impossible to ignore? So I think the trauma from the past and how you've covered over it has probably been the thing that can no longer happen anymore. Mars down here in the 4th house is really here to open up and to take action about old belief systems. And Mars's connection to Pluto, I think, is really helpful. And Uranus in the 12th house, to me, this is speaking to your unconscious mind. And now it's the time to take action. And at the time of the new moon, you're really ready for it. You're actually kind of welcoming it. So to me, what truth about myself cannot be ignored anymore, and that is that there has been trauma, that there have been difficulties that have hurt you, that you've covered over, Mainly because you don't want to cause other people misery. Isn't that nice of you? Isn't that gentle of you? And yet, when you make these decisions, like to protect other people, you don't protect yourself. And so to me, this is what would shift it is to put yourself first. So yeah, what small sacred act of cleansing and reordering could help me restore faith in myself? I'm going to go back to this this new moon. In terms of the restoration of faith within yourself, I would, if I was in your shoes, I think I might start journaling. This is a waning moon phase, and I think really getting clear about the beliefs you've held about yourself, where you've in not defending yourself and sort of covering up these difficulties you might have had with people, where maybe people have done some horrible things or said horrible things, or if you've experienced pain and you've tried to hide it. I think it's hard to hide yourself right now because Jupiter's here. He's like cat out the bag. I wonder what happened 12 years ago, by the way. Did you open up about yourself a lot more 12 years ago? But to me, this is really speaking about not covering up things anymore. And so to not cover things up, I think you have to recover them, to discover them, to like really pull everything off. And like cancers are very good at keeping things hidden. You'll bury everything in the sand. Like I've seen like crabs at the beach. My kids go to poke them and they scurry underneath the sand. They hide, and then if we continue, they give us a nip. So fair enough. But you're very good at hiding things and keeping things hidden. And so I think it's the recovery and discovery. So, for me, it might be writing. Actually, no, for me, I think I would talking to an audio device and record my voice. And just recount some of the difficulties I've had and listen to the words, see what comes up. How do you feel when this is happening? To me, this is a really small but powerful act, to help you cleanse and reorder, to really come back into yourself. And maybe there's somebody you trust that you can talk to about these things. Once they're out in the open, you can't hide over them and smooth over them anymore. You actually start to deal with them. So yeah, I hope that's helpful for you, Cancer. Like I said at the start, if you want to go to the Mercury Direct video that's coming straight up. But what I just want to say before you go is, if you like these and you'd like to go just a bit deeper, then I have a membership. I have 2 memberships, in fact. One is for the forecasts. So for €9 a month, every time, so every full moon and every new moon, I do a financial career ambition forecast for your sign. And I also do a love and connection forecast, like a relationship forecast. I also do Monday to Friday forecasts as well, general for all signs. And so you might find that helpful. It really sort of expands on these themes. If you want to go even deeper than that, I have a more expensive membership that's a lot more involved. That currently we are meeting once a week. There are these organised events where we talk about a different subject. We check things with our birth charts, and we're learning together. And so this is a place where there's a lot of discussion and a lot of camaraderie, and also a lot of sharing. And so if that is something that could help you as well, just check out my details. They're all below. It might be of use. So I'm going to let you go. Obviously, the Mercury one is coming and it's super short. So have a good one. Lots of love to you. Bye for now.